who enforces rights?
Enforces them? Like the judicial system? And
right.
What do you mean? Like in
like are women
Constitution?
Like
or police?
Women as a group versus men as a group. Like who, for example, I mean, again, this is...
the argument is that rights are enforced by force and that men have a monopoly on force. So if you can't actually enforce the rights, then you actually...
Are you talking about like on a minuscule level? Like with police? Or what are you talking about?
No, just
like
in general.
government?
Like if you strip everything back, men have a monopoly on force. So...
What is that? Can you give an example?
You'd have to ask Andrew.
I don't believe in a patriarchy, like in our entire culture, but what you just said sounds like you believe in a patriarchy. Like there's this overarching, like men control everything.
So
I do believe in patriarchy, yeah.
Oh, you do?
So
yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Again, this is not an argument I make, but he's kind of echoing something that I've heard Andrew Wilson say, is basically, if all the men decided to stop enforcing women's rights, would there be women's rights anymore? You rely on men because, for example, if somebody breaks a law, who do you rely on to enforce that law? Men, typically. Men with guns. Like the police force, right?
Well, those fields are definitely predominantly male run, but that doesn't necessarily mean there aren't any women in it.
Okay,
and
let me ask you a question.
And I don't think that our rights are given to us by men. They're given to us by the Constitution.
I'm not saying we should get rid of women's rights, but simply as a thought experiment. If all men just banded together in the supposed ultimate superform patriarchy and said, we're going to walk back women's rights, and we just banded together as men collectively, would men be able to walk back all of women's rights?
No, there's still women out there who would fight for their own voice.
No, but
you think you'd stand a chance?
Constitution.
Who's physically? But okay, when any.
It's just we're human beings and we want to have a voice in our government. That's all the right to vote is.
But do you realize that everything? Okay.
Bashful Kami donated $100. What do you think we should do with the draft? Completely get rid of it, or should we enforce it for both men and women? The volunteer force the US has had for the past 50 years has been way better.
It should just be both men and women. You can't get rid of it. It's not politically tenable. It'll never happen. There's conceivable scenarios where a draft might be necessary. Thank you for the message. Almost everything could, if there's a conflict. Geez, I feel like I'm going to butcher this. If there's a border dispute between a country and it can't be resolved through diplomacy, how is that resolved? By war? Are you
asking me my commanding officer position? We deploy the National Guard. I don't know what you want. The military.
Okay.
Which women can be in.
I feel like I need to better understand Andrew's argument here, Jake.
Do you think that men are stronger than women?
Biologically, yes.
Yes. Okay. So then, if men collectively tomorrow said that we want to take away women's rights, do you think that they would be able to do that?
I think there's more places than physical strength that can be.
You don't think that if men wanted to overpower women, they could?
They could overpower them physically,
okay,
maybe
so
not intellectually. But, so I think that.
So you think that women would intellectually sort of defeat men?
Wait, so you're saying that you're implying an actual physical war where we're going into houses?
I'm talking about force.
Before we don't have rights now.
Yeah, no. Before we had ducted sort of heating and air conditioning in apartments with all of this amazing plumbing that we've got, it was power that dictated how politics would go, and it still is to an extent today. But if tomorrow all of these amazing luxuries that we have were stripped away,
take away everything that they've built to be oh, you don't get rights.
This is a thought experiment.
Yeah,
this is a thought experiment.
You have to engage with it in a way that's good faith.
The whole fucking Andrew Wilson thing. Okay, if you look at, for example, what happened in Afghanistan. Was it Afghanistan? We were in Afghanistan. Women were able to go to school and whatnot. Well. The Taliban, the men decided, despite women's desire to be more equal to their male counterparts in Afghanistan, despite their desires and their want for equal rights, the men, by force, I'm not saying it's right, just a thought experiment here, the men by force said, nah,
That's why we have the right to bear arms.
Okay. Well, I'm curious who owns more firearms in this country, men or women?
Do you honestly think that women would stand a chance if it happened tomorrow?
This is all hypothetical.
You can exit the feminist mindset for 1 second and you can be honest with the question and just say that women would be totally screwed.
It's funny. Wait, before you answer, she says that, well, we shouldn't have equalized the draft because men and women are different, because men are stronger, but you can't seem to concede on this. You can't seem to apply that same logic to this exact same scenario, which I think is interesting.
What do you mean?
You acknowledge that men are better suited to be soldiers and fighters and killers.
Mm-hmm.
But for some interesting reason, when it comes to this conversation about, there was a civil war between men and women.
If they could overpower us, the only thing I've responded so far is we have the right to bear arms.
But do you see the logical inconsistency? You've acknowledged that men and women are different. You say women shouldn't be subject to military conscription because men are better soldiers because they're physically stronger for X, Y, Z reason. So if we're giving you a scenario where there's literally a military civil war between men and women.
Yes. My answer was what?
You said that
I said the right to bear arms. I didn't even go into detail.
I said that are they stronger? And then you said, no, it's like intellectual. So you alluded to the fact that women could intellectually fight the war.
Right. No, well, you didn't talk about war at that point.
And then I said, don't you think that women would be screwed? And you said, no, we've got the right to bear arms.
You were talking about enforcement, and I asked about police, what specific thing are you talking about? And you just said, oh, well, if we wanted to overpower.
Sleepy Bear donated $100. How do you pause and think about your answer, but when it comes out it's still lacking logic? You know the internet is forever right? You might want to stop trusting those people that think for you.
I don't know who that is.
I think I made it very clear. I actually said that if we just strip back everything and then men collectively tomorrow decided that we want to take away women's rights forcefully.
Yeah,
and then that was the hypothetical that you were engaging
and then I
with.
asked, before all these things happened, I asked physically going into people's homes and starting a war, and that's where we stopped. I never really finished my thought on that.
Take away the rights.
Because now you guys are saying something that I didn't actually say, and I'm saying I completely agree. I already agreed that men are biologically stronger. That's why I didn't agree with the.
So why did you bring up the right to bear arms then?
Tongue in cheek. It's literally the idea that we do have a way to defend ourselves. Will we have a good chance? I don't think so.
Was it tongue-in-cheek, or were you trying to make a logical argument with that?
It's totally hypothetical. It's mostly tongue-in-cheek, but it is true. We do have the right to bear arms.
We do have
a level of defense, but is it enough to overpower suddenly every man turns on us? This is the most random hypothetical to describe this.
You guys would be screwed if that horrible event were to happen. Women would be at the mercy of men.
So that's why I'm saying feminism is men's fault.
Okay.
You guys allowed it. It was weak men who allowed it.
So
was it not?
So you don't think you should vote?
Guys, this is a hypothetical
if I could go back to 1910,
don't clip.
Early this century, that's totally fine. Because the man was voting for the household, and also since women started voting, everything started going left.
That's very true.
Honestly, feminism is just to destroy the family unit.
You want to repeal the 19th is what you're saying?
No, I think it's at this point it's too late to do that now. But if we could collectively start gradually walking back, but there's no way that's just not able to happen now. I wouldn't.
Women could.
I said I would wrap in.
Or women could vote more logically.
I think we're too far gone.
Getting rid of the right for women to vote, we could actually.
I said I would wrap.
Women aren't very logical.
But women are a lot more easily manipulated.
Yeah, you're not very logical.
And susceptible
to manipulated in a good
thing.
way instead of a bad way. I don't understand why we have this pessimistic view of women voting.
What?
Well, she's saying that after women had the right to vote, everything went downhill. Why don't we actually...
That's not my words.
More women are pro-choice than pro-life because they're easily susceptible to propaganda.
We should focus on changing that instead of getting rid of the right to vote.
I'm not saying we should repeal the 19th.
Yeah, but you're saying that if women didn't have the right to vote...
We shouldn't repeal the 19th, but let's put women on the front line. We're going to put women on the front line.
But I also disagree with Brian, who thinks we should send women to war, who's going to take care of the kids.
Just send them into the meat grinder of war.
I completely disagree.
Why are you... Equality.
If you believe men and women are different, why would you want egalitarianism?
If men suddenly overpowered all of us, I would have so many less concerns than my right to vote and more why are all the men overpowering us?
Here's the actual argument, the totally not trolling argument for why we need to send women to the front lines via the draft. We got to tire out the enemy, send the women in first, and then the men can get
them to nag the enemy.
Just that.
Just nag.
Okay. All right, last chat here. We have Andy.